Hey gang, Rick Burris here for You Keep Shooting. I'm trying to get great exposure. I want to get perfect exposure every time, but I find that when I use matrix metering on a Nikon, for example, or evaluative metering on some other brands, I only get about 30% of my images perfectly exposed. You might have the same experience. 30% are too bright, 30% are too dark, 30% are just right. The Goldilocks complex. What are you gonna do? Well, I have a solution for you. When you shoot in a semi-automatic mode like aperture priority or shutter priority or even program mode, certainly not automatic, you get exposures that shift from image to image. You can't avoid it, or can you? This is why the best photographers have a trick or three up their sleeves for how to get accurate exposure. For example, with snow or a black car or tuxedo, often with skies. The great Brian F. Peterson has written about one of his tricks in his Understanding Exposure book. He calls it Brother Blue Sky, but he mostly relies on Sunny 16. Listen, my go-to is something completely different. Did you hear 4 M sounds? Yeah, let me explain it to you. I set my meter to the middle in manual exposure mode while pointing my camera to a middle value in my scene in spot metering mode. Let me say that again. Set your meter to the middle in manual exposure mode while pointing to a middle value in your scene. With this technique, your exposure is perfect 100% of the time. To do this technique, you're going to need one of 3 options. Let me give you the first option. The first option is a gray card. This one cost me $30 at Amazon. A gray card. But there are all kinds of gray cards. There are gray cards that cost $100. There are gray cards you can wear as a lanyard around your neck, $10. But you'll find that if you look inside your camera bag, it's filled with gray cards. All those little dividers are gray for a reason. They're gray cards. I got a ton of them. Step 1, technique 1, use a gray card. Wait, that reminds me, there's another way you can meter on a middle value. Your meter is colorblind. It doesn't have to be gray. It has to be a middle value. Well, hang on a minute. You've all got middle values right at the ends of your arms. It's called a palm. If you stick your hand out and you meter, spot meter on your flesh, in your palm, you get perfect exposure every time. Wait, what? Look at your manual mode. Set your meter to the middle while you're pointing to your flesh and you get perfect exposure every time. That's how cameras were designed, to get perfect flesh. Number 1, gray card. Number 2, flesh. If you can't get a long enough arm to get out there, shoot somebody else's flesh. That's why wedding dresses have low backs. I made that up. Manually meter in the middle value of the bride's back and you'll get perfect exposure every time. Gray card, flesh. The third option that you have is just meter on what you want. If you want a beautiful yellow, very bright flower, meter on it and it will show up. Those are your techniques. All you have to do is juggle the meter to the middle with what you already know. Shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. You get perfect exposure 100% of the time. If you have questions about this, check me out. Send me an email at rickburris@gmail.com. Be happy to answer your questions. And hey, check this out. Join me this May in Santorini, Greece. Oh.